An old man named Humbert Humbert has an unhealthy obsession with a 12-year-old child. How does that go for him? Let's read Lolita and find out. Welcome back to BG's Books. I'm Mr. BG, and today we will be reviewing Lolita. So, Lolita is certainly, I think, the most controversial book I will possibly ever review on BG's Books, because I've reviewed a couple controversial books. I've reviewed Rage. I have reviewed Skeleton Crew, which had the story Cain Rose Up in it, but I have never reviewed anything like Lolita before, and if you know what Lolita is about, then you should know why it's very controversial. So I'm going to try to keep it as uncontroversial as I can, but if it does end up happening, then there's nothing I can do about that. Anyway, so yeah, Lolita was written by Vladimir Nabokov, and it was published in 1955, and it was certainly controversial, but yet it also made an impression on people. So before I get into my thoughts about it, I guess I should explain the plot. So Lolita starts with a man named Humbert Humbert, and he is writing his memoir, which we immediately find out is in jail. But we will have to go all the way to the end of the story to find out how he got in jail. But basically, back in the day when he was just a young lad, he had this very cool female friend who he really wanted to date and stuff, but she ended up getting sick and dying. And so he never got to have a life with her and stuff. So many years later, when he's 30 or a 40-year-old man, he starts to want to relive his past, I guess, a little bit. And so he wants to find a young girl who can remind him of his love back in the day. And so one day he moves in with this girl named Charlotte Hayes and her young daughter Dolores Hayes, who's 12 years old. And he becomes so infatuated with Dolores that he starts to like her. And so in private, he calls her Lolita. So the first half of the book is actually rather slow. I will admit that. Reading this book took me longer than I wanted it to, because it was just quite slow at the beginning and slow throughout. But basically the first half of this is basically Humbert Humbert living with Charlotte and Dolores, and he really wants to be with Dolores. But Charlotte is coming on to him and stuff. She likes him. She doesn't like Dolores very well, but she likes Humbert Humbert. And Humbert Humbert really wants to be with Dolores and stuff. But he knows that being with a child is kind of weird. So what he does is he marries Charlotte just so that he can be with Dolores more. And one day, Charlotte is reading Humbert's journal. She finds his journal somewhere. Realizes that he doesn't like her, but likes her daughter, so she's horrified, runs out into the street, and is promptly killed by a car. So this is where stuff starts getting a little interesting. So keep in mind, little Dolores is over at camp right now. She doesn't know anything what's going on. So basically, Humbert goes and gets her, and off they go, and this is where the really interesting half of this book comes in. So basically, most of this book is just Humbert Humbert and Lolita just traveling from hotel to hotel, state to state, across the country, all like that. And yeah, and then they meet interesting people on the way, and Humbert has a feeling that someone is just watching them or following them or something. And so that's kind of a lot of this. And then, so they finally settle down in this place. Lolita goes to school, and then after she starts meeting up with boys and stuff and having boys over, and Humbert Humbert, because he wants Lolita, he's no, I don't like these boys. So then anyway, life goes on, and then eventually Lolita's I want to leave this place, let's leave. And then Humbert Humbert's okay. So they take off, and then while they take off, Lolita manages to get very sick. I think it's some sort of flu or something. And so Humbert takes her to the hospital. And so after a couple days, she gets released, and he goes over there to pick her up, and she's not there. I know, that's spooky. Even though it might be better off, I don't know. But anyway, so the nurse reveals that her uncle actually came and got her, which is weird because she doesn't have an uncle. So Yeah, remember that guy who Humbert thought was following them the whole time? Yeah, it was that guy. His name is Claire Quilty, and he just took Lolita away from Humbert. So basically, Humbert just like looks for Lolita, like tracks down everything and stuff for like the next months to years or whatever, and then eventually gives up hope, like, okay, she's gone. That's really bad. I hate that, but there's nothing I can do about it. So he like moves on with life. He meets another really interesting girl who only shows up for about maybe like 4 pages or so. She is not very interesting at all. But then one day, about 3 years after Lolita gets taken, Humbert receives a letter from Dolly Schiller, which is Lolita, and finds out 3 things. 1, she's married. 2, she is pregnant. And 3, she needs a lot of money because they're about to lose something. And so Humbert goes over there, and like Lolita is just not the same. Like, she's wearing glasses now, but yet she also looks the same. Keep in mind, she's like 17 now, so that's a lot better than 12. I guess I should mention that this whole book takes place over the course of like 5 years. So there's that. But so what happens is that Humbert desperately pleads with Lolita to ditch her husband and be with him again. And she's like, no. And so he asks her again, and she's like, no again. And so he asks her a couple more times, and then she says no both times. So then Humbert is like, okay, here's your money, and then he takes off. And now, since he found out that Quilty was the one who abducted Lolita in the first place, he goes over to Quilty's house and just kills him right there. He shoots him a bunch of times. He goes down and tells everyone, and they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, they don't even care that he's dead. They're just like, oh, someone ought to have done it. So yeah. Anyway, because murder is illegal, I know, shocking, and surprisingly, he never gets caught for all the weird stuff he's been doing with the minor, but okay. But because murder is very illegal, Humbert gets arrested and put in a mental asylum where he begins writing the memoir that this book has been about the whole time. This entire book is Humbert's memoir, and he's been writing it from prison. So yeah, that was certainly a strange book. Keep in mind, I couldn't like get really explicit with like all the stuff in there because there's a lot of stuff that I just don't want to cover. Like, say for instance, Vladimir Nabokov goes really into detail about what underage children look like, either half naked or like whatever. It's gross stuff. I don't want to get into that. But like, this book was honestly really interesting. I did say that it's like slow in the first half, and even parts in the second half it's a bit slow. But if you can like get into it, I think you can get through it really fast. It took me a week to read this, which is certainly more time than I wanted to spend reading it, but I got it done in a week. I'm sure if I read it again, knowing what I know now, I could get it done in quite a bit less than a week. But so anyway, Lolita, it is a very weird book. It is very controversial for reasons that I think make sense, but yet I enjoyed it. And even though Humbert is a bit of a pervert and a weirdo, at the end he just wants his daughter, because, you know, he's technically her stepdad. He just wants her to be happy. So he hopes that her child is good. He hopes that her marriage is good. He hopes that her pregnancy goes well. It's like at the end, he just wants what's best for Lolita. And so yeah, I mean, Humbert is a bit of a bad guy, but he's also a bit of a good guy too. Towards the end. No, I'm not excusing all of his stuff in most of the book, but at the end, when he's just like accepting that Lolita has moved on from him, he could not be more supportive of that. So that's very admirable. But anyway, so yeah, that was my review of Lolita. And if you guys have read the book, or if you want to read the book, what did you think about it? Or did you see the movies? Did you like them, or did you not? Anyway, I love hearing from you guys. So that is it from me. If you are new to the channel, be sure to like the video and subscribe in case you haven't. But yeah, I've been Mr. BG from BG's Books, and thanks for watching.